They have started it, right? So we are discussing about Docker containers and images. To run a container, we need to have Docker installed. The machine in which Docker is installed is called as Docker host. To run a container, we need to download the container image first. And container images will be stored in some central servers called as registries. You can use a JFrog as a registry. You can use Elastic Container Registry, which we will see going forward. And there is public Docker container registry. That is the default one. That is Docker Hub. Okay. Now we need to install Docker. I'm going to do that today again. Okay, from tomorrow onwards, I will come up with the Docker host before coming to the class. So what I will do is, I will again create EC2 instance in AWS Cloud, sign into the console, log into AWS Management Console. If you don't have AWS account, please create a one. Click on Services, click on Compute, click on EC2, click on Instances. In Mumbai region, I'm in Mumbai region. Some people, what they do is they will go to IAM service first. If there is any requirement, then what they will do after that, they will go to EC2 or something else. In that, then after that, after IAM service, after some global service, they will go to EC2 service. In that, what they will be doing is they will be switching to some other region by default. Okay, to some US region. Mostly you will be switching to US East 1 or US West 2, and later will forget to delete the machine. Okay, so if you forget to delete the machine, you will be charged for it. I mean, the machine is running, you will be charged for it. Click on launch instance, then choose the, because I'm going to use it for Docker, I'm writing this as Docker. Docker. If you are using it for dev, then you can name it as Docker dev. Okay. So it is Docker host machine. You can name anything. Click on this Ubuntu. This is AMI. Then choose the Amazon machine image for that. Let's choose Ubuntu 20. Then after that, then choose some higher level instance so that you will have sufficient CPU and memory. Yesterday we have created a new key pair. Today we will be using the same key pair, that is Docker October KP. Then in network settings, I want to use existing security group. I don't want to modify network VPC and all. Okay. Then choose the default one. After that, just click on launch instance. As this is not the AWS class, I'm not going to other details of this. Then click on view all instances. The instance is in pending state for now. It will come up in 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. Before that, what we need to have? We need to have SSH client. We have installed MobaXterm. Click on this. It will launch your MobaXterm application. Then in this, click on session. If you click on session, you will have SSH, Telnet, RF, all these things will be there. Click on SSH. You have to provide public IP address of this machine. Click on this. If you click on connect, you will also see the username. Copy the public IP address from here, paste it in this, check this, specify username. Username is Ubuntu, port is 22. Click on advanced SSH settings, click on use private key, browse for that private key. It will be there in my downloads, Docker October KP. Once you click on OK, you will be connected to the remote machine which is there in the AWS cloud, more specifically in Mumbai region. Okay, this is SSH file browser. This thing we have already discussed. So that's why I went little faster here. Then we need to install what? We need to install Docker. So we don't need to go anywhere, just go to our document. Here, there are two ways to install Docker. One is through apt package manager and the one is through using script which you can download from the get.docker.com. Okay, so now let's go with this. I already switched to root account. Just update the package repository and install Docker. Okay, both the things I'm doing with the single command. So with that, Docker will be installed. Okay, no issues at all. Then we have to download the images. For that, we have Docker pull and image name. Docker image ls or Docker images to list out the Docker images which are downloaded in our Docker host machine. Docker RMI we will see, Docker push we will see later during the Docker image building process. Docker tag also we will see later. This commit also we will see later. Build also we will see later. These are just available commands. We will discuss them when the time comes. Okay, these are all. We need to discuss this push, tag, commit, build during the Docker file. Okay, so this is not the right time to discuss them. Let's play with other commands with the containers first. Okay. Now, let's check whether Docker is installed or not. When we install Docker, by default, Docker client, that is Docker CLI, will also be installed. Now, let's check Docker images. See, we don't have any image. How to pull the image? For that, Docker pull Nginx. We're trying to download the Nginx Docker image. Then how to run the image? Docker run, we need to provide the image name. And what we see is, we have seen that to run the container in detached mode, we need to use D option. This thing we learned yesterday. And we saw that Docker is assigning some random names to the containers which we cannot understand. Cannot understand means if we have 10 or more containers, if we have multiple containers, how do we know which container is what? So it is better to give some meaningful name to the container. So here, to name the container manually, we have name flag, hyphen name. What is the name of the container? I'm naming the container as my Nginx. You can name the container any way you want. You can give your name also, but meaningfully, I'm naming the container as my Nginx. D stands for detached mode. Nginx is the image. So to run the container, definitely we need to provide the image. Without image, we cannot run it. Okay. Now just hit enter. The container is up and running. How to see the containers? Docker ps a. If you give a, it will also show the stopped or exited containers also. Okay. See, one container is running. So the container name is my nginx. It was up 13 seconds ago. The container port is 880. You will understand that later. Container ID, image, and the initial command that is executed. All these things you will understand. The command thing you will understand when we understand the Docker file. Okay. So then how to stop it? Before stopping, I want to go inside the container. Going inside the container, I mean to say, I want to interact with the terminal of the container. Okay, so container in itself is a virtual machine kind of thing. Okay, so we should have a mechanism to go inside of it. Nginx container means what? Inside Nginx container, Nginx application along with its dependencies will be present. Where is that Nginx application path? The index.html path. Okay. So what are the files in the directories that are there in the Nginx container? We can see that. How to do that? To do that, we need to interact with the container shell. How to do that? For that, docker exec, docker exec, that means executing a command, docker exec it, executing commands in interactive mode. Okay, so docker exec it, interactive mode. I want to interact with the which container? See, my nginx. This is the container name. Okay, and at the end, we need to provide the shell, bash. Okay, so we are trying to interact with the container shell. Which container shell? My nginx container shell, and the shell path is bash. This is right. Now hit enter. If you see, where are we now? Earlier we are in the Docker host. Now we are into the container. So now we switch to the container shell. If you see, this is the container ID. If you see, this is the container ID. See, we see root at the container ID. So we are into the root account of the container. Got it? Which container? My nginx container. Here the container ID is this one, right? Now, see, we are into the container shell. I'm clearing, still we are into the container shell. If you see, these are the directories and the files that are there in the container. Okay, now let's create some file here. Let's create some file here. How to create file? We can use byAnjireddy, bi my file .txt. Oops, here bash bi command not found. That means bi editor is not available inside this particular container. bi editor is there in the Docker host, but it is not there in the container, right? So here Docker host software is different, and the softwares which are available inside the containers are different. If I take you to our basic diagram, see, if you see, the VI editor is there in this host machine, but inside the container, the VI editor is not there. Okay, and let's install VI editor inside this. For that, apt update, we have to update the package repository. Apt install vim, and I'm auto approving it. See, where are we? We are into the container shell. Don't forget that. Now let's bi myfile.txt. See, vi editor is successfully installed. This is my first file in the container. Okay, escape :wq to write and quit. This is a basic Linux command, right? Then hit enter. With that, the file will be saved. If you see, myfile.txt has been created in the container. It is there in the container. Okay, we have created that in the container, not in the host, right? Now, of course, finally, the disk, the underlying system resources only be utilized by the containers. Okay, the CPU memory disk will be of host only, right? Now, here, let's cat it, cat myfile. See, this is there. This is how to interact with the container shell. Now, let's go to the index.html file, cd user share nginx html. This is the path where we will find the index.html of nginx server. See, this is the content that will be served by the nginx. Okay, we will know how to access this Nginx application from inside and outside the Docker host machine going forward. Okay. So now we are into the container shell. How to exit from the container shell? For that, we have to use control PQ simultaneously, or we can use exit. If you exit, see what is happening. We exited from the container shell and we return to the host host terminal. Got it. Now, if you want to go again into the container shell, what we have to do? Again, same command, docker exec ID, the container name, and the executable path of that particular shell. Got it. Now, Docker PS we have seen. Let's see whether we have any stopped containers or not. We don't have any stopped container. Now, how to stop a container? Docker stop my nginx to stop the container. Docker PS, if you see, you won't see any containers because there are no running containers. Now, Docker PS -a, if you see, the container is in exit state. How to start it again? Docker start my nginx. With that, the container will be started again. See, we can see this. Now, Docker PSA, we won't be having any exited container. We have only running container. Then how to remove it? Docker rm is the command to remove the container. Docker rm my nginx. See, we got the error saying that we cannot remove a running container. We cannot remove a running container. To remove a container, first the container has to be stopped. How to stop the container? Docker stop my nginx. The container is stopped now. Now we can use Docker rm my nginx. With that container will be removed. How to check it? If I check -a, you see that there are no containers. All the containers are removed. What is the command to remove a container? Docker rm the container name or the container ID, anything you can give. Got it? If you remove the container, what happens to the image? Image won't be removed. Image is still there. Okay. So when we remove the container, when we stop the container, nothing will happen to the Docker image. Okay. And one thing we have seen is that we can run multiple containers from the same image. Now, how to start the container again? How to run a container? That container is completely removed. If you want to run any other container, we need to use docker run name. Now, what I will do is I will try to run. Now, let's remove this image also. Docker RMI. To remove image, we have Docker RMI command. I stands for image. Remove image. RMI. Docker RMI. What is the image name? You can use image name or image ID. Nginx. See, that image is removed. Okay, and these are image layers which we will understand going forward, friends. Okay, it's not the right time to understand the image layers. Now, if I see Docker images, see there are no images. Now, what I will do is, even though there are no images, what we have seen is that to run a container, first we need to download the image. Then only we can run the container from it. Now, I will try to run the container without downloading the image. Name, I'm naming the container as C1. Then what is the image? I want to use the Nginx image. Nginx image will be there in where? That will be there in the Docker Hub, but we didn't download it. What I stated earlier is to run a container, first we need to download the image. Then only we can run the container from it. Now what I'm doing is I didn't download the image. Still, I want to run the container from that image. Okay, and let's run this in detached mode. Now let's hit enter. See what is happening here. Unable to find image. Nginx latest locally. So if the image is not downloaded and if you are trying to run the container, what will happen is because that image is not found locally, it is pulling from library, Nginx library from the Docker hub. So by this, you understood that we don't need to pull the image. We can directly use a Docker run and we can use the image name. If the image is not present, it will be pulled. We no need to perform pull separately. Got it? Now, if you see that image will be there, that is downloaded with the run command. Docker ps, if you see that content is also there. Got it? Now let's do one thing. The container is running. Now let's try to remove the image which is attached to that container. Docker RMI Nginx is the image. See, error from Docker daemon conflict unable to remove repository reference Nginx because a container with this ID is using its reference image called this image. This image ID is this one. So when a container is running, the image which is attached to that, the image which is used by that container can't be removed. Got it? To remove the image, we need to remove the container first. Okay? Not just stopping the container, we need to remove the container, then only we can remove the image. Got it? And one thing is that I'm trying to run another container with the same name. I'm trying to run another container from the same image with the same name. See, error conflict. The container name C1 is already in use. That means we cannot have two containers with the same name. The container names should be uniquely named. The containers should be uniquely named. That's what we saw from here practically. Then other thing is that let's run another container using the same image but with a different container name. That is possible. Docker ps. Got it? Now let's run another container. We can run as many containers as you want from the same image. Got it? The container names are different even though they are using the same container image. If you see, the container IDs are unique. The container IDs are unique. Now, to go inside any of container, Docker exec IT, the container name we need to give. Let's go and interact with the C2 container. Then what we need to do, we need to provide the bash. Okay, exit from here, Docker ps. See, that is the thing. Now, what we discussed is to remove a container, we need to stop the container first. But is there any way to remove a running container? Yes. Docker rm C1, we can't remove it because the container is running. We can use force. F stands for force. F stands for force. That means if you use F, the container will be stopped and it will be removed. See, the container C1 no longer will exist as we have removed it forcibly. Got it? Now, what I want to do is, I want to get the IDs of all the containers that are running here. Now, let's run few more containers. Here, let's give this as C1. And this C1 container is entirely different from the container which we have deleted. Okay. Even though the container names are same. So these are all the containers that we have. Now I want to get the list of all the container IDs. Then for that, echo docker ps aq. Okay, so Docker PS A we know, which will list out all the running as well as stopped containers. Q will give the IDs of all these containers. Now echo. If you see, these are all the container IDs. Now what I want to do is, I want to remove all of them in one go. For that, Docker RM, we know to remove the container, we need to have RM, and to remove the stopped container, we need to use force. Then here I want to remove all these containers with force. So for that, what we have to do is, we need to keep this here Docker RMF, and if you give, it will give the list of, it will remove the all the containers that are there, either they are running or stopped. So we should be very careful when we are executing this command. Okay, if you see, all of these containers were removed. Docker PS A, all the containers are removed. All the containers are removed. Okay, so this is, now that we understood, and we can run, okay, that is fine. Now let's see this thing. Now let's pull another image, pull Ubuntu. Now let's try to interact with the, let's try to create Ubuntu container, and we don't need to pull the image specifically. Docker run. Now let's name the container as my Ubuntu. Okay, let's name the container as my Ubuntu. Then we need to provide the image name at the end. So the image name for Ubuntu is Ubuntu. And now let's see some strange thing here. Docker run, this is the command we have used. Then now let's use D option. Because image is not found locally, it will be downloaded. Docker images, that Ubuntu image is full. Docker PSA, if you see that Ubuntu container is in exited state, why it is exited? It was created 21 seconds ago, and immediately after 1 second, it got exited. Which container? My Ubuntu container, which is created from the Ubuntu image. Why it is exited? Why? Because if you take Nginx container, in that an application is running. But if you take Ubuntu, it is an operating system based image where there is no application running. So that's why what it does is, when we have run the container, it will execute this dash command, and we didn't provide interaction mode. We didn't provide the interactive mode option in the command. And there is no application running. That is one reason. If there is no application running, then what is the task? The task that container has is, it has the task of just executing this command. So it opened the bash terminal and it exited, because we didn't interact, we didn't provide interact option in that. Okay, slowly we'll understand that more clearly. Now what we will do is, now let's run another container called my Ubuntu 2. Okay, now we need to remove this D option. Now let's give IT. So we know the bash command will be executed, and earlier, to interact with the container, what we have given exec IT, we have given bash at the end. So here, as there is no application running, so this command will be executed. So this command you will understand during the Docker file, how to put this command. So now, if you are using, if you are running the operating system based container, as there is no default application running inside of it, we have to interact with the container to make the container running. So Docker run, here also container ran and it exited because we are not working with that container. There is no application running. So that's the reason it was exited immediately after 1 second after its creation. Now, what we are trying to do is, we know that there is no default application running. Now let's interact with its terminal. Docker run, name of the container, image, then IT. We are creating new container here. And immediately after container is created, immediately once the container came into running state, we are trying to interact with its terminal. Now if I hit enter, see where are we? We are into the new container. This is the earlier container. We are into the new container. Now let's use to exit from the operating system based container, that is Ubuntu, we need to use control PQ. Control PQ. Okay, it will be exited. Control PQ simultaneously press. So with that, we will be exiting from the container terminal and we are back to the host terminal. Now let's see. See, we have two containers running. Earlier that thing is exited, but now we have interacted with it and we didn't exit, we just exited from the terminal itself. Okay, now how to interact with it again? Normal process. Docker exec it my Ubuntu 2. Sorry, execute my Ubuntu 2. We need to give dash at the end. Got it? Control PQ. Now if you use exit, what will happen? Okay, of course, that exit is not doing anything here. That is fine. Okay, you can use either exit or control PQ. With that, we will be exiting from the container terminal, but not the container. Okay. Now this thing. Now, how to? We can't interact with it because it is in stopped state. We can't interact with it. Docker exec it my Ubuntu dash. See, the container is not running. If it is not running, we can't interact with it. Even if you stop, see what will happen is that, see, it is exiting. Then to restart a container, we have a command called docker restart my Ubuntu 2. We can restart the containers with that command. See, we can restart. It was up 2 seconds ago. Got it? Now let's try to restart it. I think we can't restart the stopped container. See, so that is also restarted and it is exited immediately. Got it? So Docker PSJ, Docker RM. Now there should be a mechanism to, yeah, we can't attach to it. Attaching is means something like interacting with it shallowly. Docker start. No such container dash. I think there is no way to. Okay, anyway, I will check that command. Okay. Now, Docker. So only running container will be shown if you use Docker PS. If you use Docker PSA, it will show. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to start it and I'm trying to use it, but I think as there is no application running, it is exiting immediately. That thing will happen for sure. But I just want to check, is there any way to start and interact with it? That's not there. Okay, so whatever the thing that we are giving, that should be given when we are running the container itself. Now let's remove it. Docker RM, we can remove the two containers by giving their IDs like this. And we know that only one container will be removed, this one, and this one is running, it won't be removed. So we have to use force. With that, all the containers will be running. Okay, Docker PS. We won't be having any container. Now let's run the container again. Name C1. Let's use Ubuntu. We need to use IT here. Okay, and we have to put, when we are interacting, we need to use bash also. And in case of this, it is optional because the default command that will be executed is bash only. That's why we don't need to provide this. And what is the default command? We will understand during the Docker file. Got it? We have entry point and we have CMD. So there you will understand that. Okay. So now exit from this. See, when we are exiting, what happened? It is exiting from the container also. So that's the reason I recommend you to use Control PQ to exit from the operating system based container. So the same thing I have documented also. Now, Docker images. See, now let's try to remove this image. It won't be removed because already a container is attached to it. The Docker system prune. We have a command called Docker system prune -a. Docker system prune -a. See, what it does is this will remove all stopped containers, all networks not used. What are networks? You will understand all images, all build cache and everything. I'm approving this. See, it will remove all the stopped containers, all the images. See, all those things, all the networks which are not being used, all those things will be removed. What is the command? Docker system prune -a. You don't need to worry about this. All these commands I have given in our document. Now, how to inspect a container? How to inspect a container? Docker run, name the container C1, run it in detached mode. Now we are trying to run Nginx container. The container name we are giving as C1. Now let's inspect it. Docker inspect C1. We have a command called inspect. It will give the details of the containers, the mount path, the IP address, and the image that is being used, the ports and everything. And if you go here in network section, the network details will be there. We have network section, network class also. Okay. Now, if you see, every container will be assigned with some private IPv4 address. Every container that is created will be assigned with some unique private internal IP address. This is the IP address of that container called C1, right? Docker PS. We have only one container, C1. So we can inspect the container. How to inspect it? Docker inspect the container name we need to give. If it is C1, you have to give C1. If it is C2, you can give C2. Whatever the container that you want to inspect, that container name we need to provide here. Got it? Now, what are all run, executive, attached to going to set up a running container which is moved into the background. We can use it as Docker attach. Docker inspect, Docker port to see the ports used by the container. Docker port to C1. Docker ports C1. Docker port, only Docker port is there, but this command is not working. I don't know, but here you can see the ports here itself. Got it? In inspect also, you can see the ports of the container. Then logs. Okay, now let's see the logs of the container. Docker logs and container name. So you can see the logs of the container. And if you want to see the logs, live logs, That means if you want to see the logs flowing as they are coming, we can use -f. See, you will see the logs live. If any log is coming, automatically it will be coming here. It will stream here. Okay. Now if you want to exit from this, Control C. Now, what is other command that is left? Docker rm we discussed. This one we have discussed. Restart we have discussed. Stop we have discussed. rmf we have discussed. Rm discussed. If you want to restart the container after some seconds, you can do this. T and 10. Stop we have discussed. Start we have discussed. PS we have discussed. Docker container ls. Docker container ls or Docker PS are same. Okay. Docker container ls, Docker PS or same. Docker container ls. I recommend you to use Docker PS because PS has the option A to see stopped containers also. Then we have seen interactive mode. We have seen name option. We have seen D option. D stands for running the container in detached mode. Now let's see other options that are there. So now pull tomcat, pull command we have seen, pull we have already seen. Now let's try to understand the port mapping. Let's try to understand port mapping. Now let's try to run tomcat container. The official image for tomcat is tomcat and tommy. Both images are there. Now we know this command docker run. We are naming the container as my tomcat. The image name is tommy. And what is this P option? Let's understand this. Now, before going to that, docker run, when I put name my tomcat, then let's run this in detached mode. Tommy. This is the image. As the image is not found locally, it will pull the image from Docker Hub, which is a default public registry which is integrated with the Docker engine. Now, if you see, this is running. The Tomcat is running. See, the port of the Tomcat is 8080. And if you inspect it, you will see the IP address. Docker inspect my Tomcat. Here, if you see, this is the IP address of the Tomcat. Okay. Now, the port, what is the port? Port, we have seen Docker port, my Tomcat or Docker PS. Here itself you can see 8080 is the port. Port is 8080. We have the IP address, we have the port. Can we access Tomcat? Yes. How to access it? Curl this thing. Port is 8080. See, we are able to access the Tomcat. Now, this is the private IP address which is accessible only within the Docker host machine. Docker host machine, and from other containers also it will be accessible. We will see that later. Now, or else let me try to do one thing. So it is accessible from the Docker host. Okay. Now let's create a container, Docker run, name the container as C1, and let's interact with it as we are using Ubuntu and give bash. It's optional to give bash here. Let's give as a best practice so that you won't forget it for other containers. C1 is already in use. Okay, let's use C2. Now let's call it from here. Earlier we have accessed the Tomcat from Docker host. Now let's try to access it from the container. See, call is not found. Let's install call apt update and apt call. So this is the command. Somewhere in the documentation I have given this. to install curl. Now let's try. See, where are we? We are into the container only, friends. Please do remember that. See, the Tomcat is successfully accessible from the other containers and from the host also, as this is the private IP address. But can we use this private IP address in my browser, which is outside of the Docker host? Can we use it? It is very nonsense to use it because I already told that this is the internal IP address. So we cannot use it here, but let's have a try here. We can't access Tomcat here. But how to access the Tomcat server, which is running in the Docker host from outside of the host machine? For that, we have a concept called port mapping. What is it? Port mapping. So what is port mapping? Let's understand here. This is the Docker host machine. This is the Docker hub from where we have downloaded the Tom image, Tomcat. We have downloaded that into our host. Who downloaded? We downloaded the Docker run command, have performed that. This is the image. This is the image that is downloaded. This is the Tomcat image, right? Then from this, what we have done, we have created a container. We have created the container. I will represent the container with this. And this container has got private IP address. This container name is what? The container name is my Tomcat. My Tomcat is the container name, right? So the IP address of this container is this one. Forget about the IP address. The port of this is 8080. So the port of the container is what? 8080. This is the port of the container. Now from this machine and from another container called Ubuntu, we are able to access it with its IP address. Now to access it from outside of the host machine, we need to perform the port mapping. Performing port mapping means what we will do is we will map the port of the container to some port on the Docker host machine. Okay, we will map the port of the container to some port on the Docker host machine. This is called port mapping. This is called as what? Port mapping. And what port? What port? You can choose any port. You can choose any port. Now let's choose 7070 port here. Okay. So what we are doing is we are mapping the port of the container. That the port of the container is what? 8080 port where Nginx application is running. We are mapping to some port on the Docker host and we are choosing 7070. Now what we will do is, if you do this, see, we have the public IP address of the host, okay, and with the public IP address of the host and the port, what is the port of the host that we have mapped? 7070. This is the public IP address and this is the port which we have mapped to the container. Now if you hit this, the traffic will come to the this one and it will be mapped to this container, that is container port, that is 8080. Okay. Now, so this is how we will perform port mapping. How to perform this? For that, see, now let's exit from this. Docker PS. Now let's remove all these things. C1. These two contents will be removed. Now let's run Docker run. Name the container as Tomcat itself. You can name Tomcat, my Tomcat, your name. Anybody's name you can use here. So let's use Tomcat itself. Then Tom is the image. Let's run this in detached mode. Now, how to perform that port mapping? To perform this port mapping, we have option called -p. We have P option. P stands for port, and we need to provide the port of the host first, 7070, 7070. And what is the port of the Tomcat? The default port of the Tomcat is 8080. Then you will get some doubt like, sir, how do I know this is 8080? Earlier we have run the container, there it has shown 8080. That's why I'm able to tell it. But what if I didn't run the that thing earlier? How do I know the Tomcat port? So you can go to the Tomcat documentation in the Docker Hub. There you will see the port of the Tomcat. Okay, so that is in the documentation you will get it. Now see how to perform this port mapping. P host to port and the container port, and if you do that, the port mapping will be done. The container is running. If you see 7070 is the port on the host that we have chosen. Now let's copy the public IP address of this host, then paste. And what is the port? 7070 port, not this port. We need to use the port of the host. Now if I hit enter, if everything goes well, we should able to access that Tomcat. I'm giving this in the chat box. You also please try to access it and try to hit this and tell me whether you are able to access it or not.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you are able to access? Yes. So Shivakumar is asking, hello sir, if we install Docker at our home computer, then we use private IP address and it can't be accessed from outside. How can we practice in such case? You will have public IP address, right? If that IP address is publicly accessible, you will be able to access. Otherwise, not. Okay, that is the thing. So in that you should have public IP address. To access it, you should have public IP address of the host. Otherwise, you can't. Okay. Yeah. So this is how to perform port mapping. Now, one thing is that if you are lazy enough to choose this port, you can give the chance to Docker. So that means I don't want to choose this port. I don't want to mention this and all those things. I want to just perform port mapping automatically. How to do that? So I'm trying to run another Tomcat container. Now Docker. Now let's run name this as Tomcat 2. And here we cannot use the same port again. We cannot use the same port again. It will throw error because conflict will come, right? If we have another container, if we are choosing the same port and if we are mapping the same port, conflict will come. Where should the traffic should go? Okay, so it won't be allowed. You will see error if you do that. Okay, see, port is already allocated. Okay, that's the reason. But content will be running. Tomcat 2 will be running, but the port mapping won't occur. Of course, that will be an exited state, I think. Yeah, so this is an exited state. Now, let's try to run another container. Let's 3. And I don't want to take the risk of manual port mapping. I want to have automatic port mapping. For that, we will give hyphen capital P. If I do hyphen capital P, and if you see, I want to get everything in one line. See, this is the Tomcat 3. So earlier in Tomcat, we have chosen 7070. Here we have performed automatic port mapping by using capital P. If you perform automatic port mapping using capital P, what happened? See, some random port has been allocated, was mapped to the container, and this is 32768. 32768. See, this is accessible. This will also be accessible. This is different port. This is different. This is from different container. This is from Tomcat 3 container. Got it? So this is how to perform the port mapping. Is similar steps for Windows OS as well. Yeah, Shokumar. So for Windows, Docker host. For Windows, we have Windows Docker desktop. I told you, right? We have Docker desktop for Windows, and as I already told you, if you install Docker in the Windows, we need to install Windows subsystem for Linux also. Got it? Okay. So I have given in the documentation, or if I'm not given, that is also fine. Install Docker for Windows. Docker in Windows, not for. Okay. I remember somewhere I haven't seen Docker desktop for Windows. This is an executable file. See, if you see, it will start downloading this. You just have to execute that. Okay, it is about 500 MB in size, and after that we need to install WSL to backend. Okay, so we need to install that WSL also.
Can you hear me?
See, for detailed instruction, we have to go to this documentation to install WSL. Install WSL. Okay, so in PowerShell you can use this. Okay, you can go to it. Detached mode means container will be running in the background. Okay, if you don't use detached mode, what will happen? Docker run, let's name the container C1 nginx. I'm not using the detached mode now. See what will happen? The container is running and logs are flowing. Can we execute other commands here? We can't execute. So what I want to do is I want to run the containers in detached mode. Okay, so the container is now running in detached mode and I can execute other commands. Interactive mode means we are interacting with the container shell, container terminal. Okay, so that's all for today, friends. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, we can wind up this session. And tomorrow, Saturday, we will be having class. On Sunday, we won't be having class. And from Monday onwards, the new link will be shared to the people, and to the people we have paid the money for the course. Tomorrow, all of you are eligible. Got it? And one thing, so they didn't provide us the Google Drive. Okay, I requested them, and to today morning also I reminded them. By today evening, they will share us the Google Drive where I will upload. They may be waiting for others to pay for it, pay for the course. Otherwise, it will be shared by others, right? So that's the reason. Okay, so be patient enough, and they will be sharing us the Google Drive where I will upload the notes. Anyway, you have the videos already provided by them.
Hello, Laxman.
The first
Quick
class.
question.
Okay, Ashish, if you go to the chat box, I think somebody is asking, can we download the image? I don't know, Balaji. I think again. So in the chat box, they have given the videos, links, and all. I think if you see video, so see, I will ping this again. I will ping this again here. See, I have pinged the message that they have. So here they have provided the links for the previous classes. Okay, I think this is the third class if I'm not wrong. We have started the class on Wednesday. Yesterday it was Thursday, and today it's Friday.
Laxman.
Okay, friends. Thank you.
Hello, Laxman. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Abdul, I'm sorry. As I said yesterday, My earphones are not working properly. That means output I can't hear. If you have anything, please ping in the chat. Most probably, I will find some time to purchase new earphones today. My boy, what he has done is he has done something to these things, and these were not working. Mic is working fine, but earphones. If you have any question, please ping it in the chat. I can read it from there. I know it is hard to type, but okay. Anyway, let's wait tomorrow. How much time will we be spending on Docker and Kubernetes? Okay, Docker, it will be about 13 to 15 classes, and Kubernetes about 16 to 17 classes, something like that. Over a span of 45 days, we will be having classes of about around 35 classes we will be having. Okay, we will be having more classes for Kubernetes than Docker. Yeah, thank you all. Bye. Let's meet tomorrow. Yes, from this above link, we can access the previous two classes. Thank you all. Bye.